Good evening, everyone. This is Seda Reda speaking at the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. This is Monday, so happy Monday. I'm really looking forward to another great week with my guests. And tonight I have a very special guest. She's a friend. I love hosting friends at this show. At the other end of the line, it's Pamela Knapp tonight, and she's a very, very accomplished expert in the financial realm. She is an economist by training, and she's right now in some critical positions for some of world leaders in different areas. Some of those companies are such as PEUGEOT, Lanxess, just recently Signify. We're going to talk about all sorts of different industries because she travels just easily between those different industries. So please welcome with me, Pamela. Pamela, hello.
Hi, Sarah. Good evening.
So nice to have you here. Thank you for hosting Entrepreneur's Kitchen in your kitchen, which is not far from here. I could just almost wave at you. So it's so bad that we can't be together, but you know, this is isn't this technology is an awesome thing, isn't it?
Nowadays we could meet, huh? But some weeks ago it was the way to keep contact. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's just coming back in Salzburg. I am hearing that the masks won't be mandatory within 1 week or so. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the faces in total. Well, Pamela, thank you again for accepting to being my guest at the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. And I know that you're an excellent cook, that you can really, really do some of the best food I've ever eaten. But we asked you for something that's simple and easy to make. So what did you come up with?
Oh, it's really easy. A cold dish, so I don't plan to have a conversation with you while I'm cooking. Like the big chefs, when they perform in front of a camera, I have prepared it in advance just to show what the result could look like.
Oh, that's perfect. You know, this is a woman who knows business. Yeah.
When it started yesterday, a very small eggplant. So I bought it at the Schranne, this local market. And they told me that this is really the eggplant to use to make these fried eggplants in olive oil and with vinegar and garlic, of course, a lot of garlic. And so I did prepare it yesterday, and it needs to stay over one night in the fridge. So it was not possible to prepare it and then put it in the fridge and then tell you next evening we will have the discussion.
So you just fry some eggplants in olive oil and then put garlic in it and some vinegar and leave it in the fridge for overnight. Sounds like,
yes.
Yeah, I think that's one of my, that is a candidate to become one of my favorite dishes.
I added some very, very hot pepperoni. So in order to spice it up, which was one of
Perfect. Thank you so much for being one of the rare guests who did everything right in terms of cooking. Well, actually,
still something to prepare, because together with the eggplants we will have tomato salad. And again, I used the local markets and I found green tomatoes, which is a very rare thing, green tomatoes, known from the movie, you know it most probably. And one big red tomato as well. Red onion, and again, some garlic, fresh garlic.
Fresh garlic is very good. I wasn't as lucky as you at the Schranne because my apricots turned out to be really not ripe. So I decided to make a marmalade. So I have been having my advocates in sugar, resting for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to add some salt, and at the end just a few drops of lemon juice, and marmalade is, I didn't know that it's this easy actually, but my mom, who is here, says, yeah, make those just work out as a marmalade. So perfect. There's not,
don't forget some alcohol.
Alcohol. Okay. Well, by the way, apropos marmalade, the marmalade is not only a jam in the pan, but also right now we seem to have a huge marmalade in terms of the business world as well. Since you are in so many different industries, let's talk a little bit. Let's start just chatting about how do you see this crisis? I think it's really, really important what an expert like yourself from within, from the heart of the industry, from the heart of different industries, have to say.
Yeah, I think what we all should take into consideration is that this is a crisis never one experienced before, at least in our lifetime. I don't talk about the big wars and comparable things, which were certainly crisis mode as well for the people who experienced it. But people who are in business now, for them, it's really the first of its kind. In this way it was. So that means, and I think we need to take this into consideration, this means that no one was really prepared for it. And, I think this you should take as credit for everyone who acted in this, for politics, for companies, for private people who behaved silly from time to time at the beginning. No one was really thinking, at least in our part of the world, things like Ebola and things in Africa, but that's always very, very far away from us. So no one was thinking that this could reach us one day. And, it's always amazing if you see how all these crisis preparation and risk analysis, which is done routinely by companies and by big companies, and really done diligently, and everyone tries to think out the different scenarios and prepare and remediate and so on. That this kind was really not something you could take out of the drawer and say, yes, now we need to do this. I don't want to say that this preparation in regard of risk management and thinking through different scenarios and things like that is useless. Absolutely not, because those companies who have done this in a different way, they can, even that it's not exactly the scenarios they prepared for, quicker adapt to it and have more easily the structures in place. So a kind of a risk committee, a kind of daily or nightly meetings in order to coordinate and all these things. In companies, you have all these structures already existing in case there is a crisis, then you can use this to manage this crisis.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that because, you're right. In boardrooms, people speak about all sorts of different risk scenarios. I remember recently being at one meeting where the main topic was about environmental risks. Fridays for Future was posing a lot of supply chain management issues into the equation. But when you think about people like, let's say, Bill Gates, for instance, there has been this TED talk running around, which he gave, I think, in 2005 or either 5 years ago or 2005. I can't remember exactly, where he says, we should be prepared for a pandemic. So when does a risk, in your opinion, then really become something that should be considered? Sorry to
You need to consider every risk when you do a risk analysis and a risk preparation for your company. And nothing should be ruled out as absolutely not relevant. This is, I think, the first recommendation. But then, of course, in every risk analysis, you have normally this link of impact of the risk on your business and probability of entry of the risk. And if you had never such a risk in your, let's say, past experience, then it is, of course, extremely difficult to estimate the probability of that risk.
yeah. Yeah.
So, and with low probability, these things, they get low in attention in companies. And therefore, not everyone was willing to take out the screenshot of this is what we have to do. But as I said, there are other risks which are in this risk ranking more probable. And for them, you have institutional or organizational structures in place, like risk committees, like you need to involve the different disciplines of the company and to build up action in this and this and this way. And this can be, of course, used then for such a risk.
Yeah. I mean, when we, oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And what I observed in all these companies where I was or where I am active is that this type of action which were needed for the shutdown and for managing this with all these aspects, even for preparing all the security measures necessary in the in production places and in every place where it was relevant, and home office and IT, which needed to be speeded up, and all these absolutely necessary things for the shutdown and home office and so on. Mm-hmm. These went quite well. So the big companies who had this risk management things in place, they could manage this. Mm-hmm. And what I do see now is that the huge challenge is now this ramp up again, because this is something you cannot do out of your own means alone. So you need your customers, you need your suppliers, you need your financiers, you need a lot of others who ramp up as well and who are in the mood of buying and do want to produce and all these things. So this is something, and luckily this is the second phase, so we could already prepare for the second phase once we were in the shutdown. But this is something which is much less predictable and where you depend on others, and therefore you have not everything in your own hands.
Yeah, I think that aspect is really, really interesting, because I'm just thinking about it as you say, absolutely right, because if you want to bring your business back, if your supply chain and if your customers and if their supply chain and their customers, if they're all not ready, which brings us back to this topic of, the global economy. These crises that has shown us probably how, on the one hand, actually, we're all vulnerable, thinking that, Europe would never experience something like a pandemic again after the Spanish flu, proved to be just an illusion. And also, that we now feel much more connected with the world, because everybody needs everybody to just start up their businesses again. You disagree? Excellent.
I think you would need to. But what you can observe, I don't say in my companies or in the companies where I'm active, but in some other places, that people tend to use this as an argument against globalization, and they are going back to presuming that everything could be done in our home turf, and you do not need many others and things like that. I don't.
Yeah, which I assume you don't trust in that kind of argument.
Right? In some aspects, it is absolutely useful that we think about transportation costs and harm of transportation and things of like that, and independence from others in very crucial and important products, so that we are not left out of medicine or other things. So a kind of crucial reserve, I think, there, and this does not mean storage, but also the capability to produce and serve. But I don't. I would not like to make a case against globalization out of this.
No. Yeah, I think it just also, I mean, nowadays it makes really very little sense. I do understand, when we focused on local produce, local farming and things like that, it's a different business than, producing goods that are easily produced elsewhere, Well, let's not go into much detail there. But what I want to know also from you is actually about, wait, I'm just remembering that I'm forgetting. People can ask questions. See, this is the middle of the show. And I need to, I need to tell people, my dear audience, if you want to ask any questions, please go ahead and ask on Slido as usual. Our event code is 82449, 82449. If you have any questions to Pamela Knapp, who is a board member at Peugeot, Lanxess, Signify, and other companies. These are just three of the some of the most. Yes, exactly. Well, actually, I have a question. So when you, I have lots of questions. When you wander between, one industry to other industries, on the one hand in specialty chemicals, in the other hand, cars manufacturing, then you used to also work for steel, and then, Signify is in the lights business, it's in the lighting. And so how does that work? How do you actually switch off and on between those different industries?
Yeah, so it is not from week to week that I enter into a new industry. Take as an example Peugeot. I'm at Peugeot since 2011, so for 9 years now, and Saint-Gobain similarly since 2013, so 7 years. And with this, you get, of course, a better insight into the respective industry and into the company. And this allows you as well that the preparation time for the one or the other thing is a bit less intensive than if you are starting a new board mandate. And in the case of Signify, I can't really tell you a lot yet on that industry because this is brand new. I joined it in. And here I do have really a huge file of introductory materials, which I need to
go through. Yeah.
Fully, so I started, not yet finished. And in the case of Lanxess, so chemistry was never my big favorite in school.
That's hilarious.
It would be better if I go a bit into this nowadays. And there was a very nice teaching book, which was online, of course, from Deutsche Bank, which Deutsche Bank did for its analyst who had to analyze the chemical industry, and chemistry for beginners. So I started with that.
Excellent.
For getting into the different industries. And then a big company has, in essence, always similar processes. So it's not you step into a new company and you do not understand anything from the company processes. So there are main processes which are normally quite similar between the different industries.
Well, that makes things slightly easier.
Not exactly equal, of course. It depends of the industry.
Yeah.
But you can find your way easier through these processes into the different companies.
Yeah, and obviously also with the experience and with the expertise you gain throughout the years. My last question, because questions are already raining in Slido. Thank you, guys. So my last question before going into the Slido questions is, Pamela, what is your secret in your companies that I mean, almost none of your companies had a real hit out of this crisis. I mean, yes, of course, in some cases it's an industry specific trouble. If you're in the travel industry, or if you're in the hospitality industry, then obviously this was a huge issue. But how do you think one can go about these things and really build more solid companies that can withstand this kind of threat for a couple of months at least? Because I mean, it was like even in the first 2 weeks there was a huge problem in so many different companies.
Okay, first of all, it is not correct that the companies haven't been hit, because chemistry has been hit, of course, and automotive has been hit, of course, and lighting, which is busy in lightening stadiums and fairs and retail places and things like that. Of course, they had a huge drop in demand. But, I think one of the aspects that these companies have been hit, but not in the way of bringing them in danger, has been, of course, that they had a good liquidity basis up front, and have secured the liquidity right up front in the crisis. No, that was something I think everyone learned from the financial crisis in the past, that cash is king, and that you really need to make sure that you have sufficient cash in-house. And
well, some learned it, and others obviously didn't learn their lesson. So
it's also relative. If you have 7 billion of cash in the automotive industry on your accounts, you think 7 billion, it's quite a comfortable position. But if you realize that you can lose 4 billion in a month, then it tells you that eventually even 7 billion is not enough. And you need to make sure that you have access to liquidity, and even at the price that this is eventually a bit more costly. Definitely, everywhere the first step, make sure that you have cash on in-house.
Yeah, so household tips from Pamela Knapp, who is a financial expert. This is the lesson of the day. But what do you think about then governments jumping in and saving things and claiming the role of the hero and claiming company shares and things like that?
Yeah. Okay, so I need to say upfront that I'm not deep into the detail of, for example, the Lufthansa package now. I just know what I have heard in the media. But in that case, I have the impression that the state acts like, I don't know the English word, Krisengewinnler. Eventually you can translate.
You can Google it. What's that word again?
Krisengewinnler. So he uses a crisis to make a lot of profit later. And, if you see that they step into as a shareholder at low price Lufthansa is actually, and that they even openly declare that they don't want to stay in, but they want to go out once the share price is higher. Nice concept. And if you see that they get for their loans they are putting in to the company 12.5% interest rate, whereas the state can get the money at minus rates. So I think it is not a fair way to do it. I think if they would be ready to give guarantees and Lufthansa can get credits on the market with these guarantees, then Lufthansa would have it much easier than this burden of the shareholdership of the state, which is linked to conditions, and these shareholder loan, which is the other part, which is very expensive.
Yeah, one would really wish for more fairness in these whole deals. I want to really go into these questions that come in Slido because we're almost at the end. So let's try to be, I mean, questions are deep, but let's try to be not too long. So one question goes, how does the requirement for boards change in an environment that's so unstable as ours? Does one need different kinds of personalities on boards?
I would say the environment has never been stable. we did have really extreme challenges also in the past years. So the requirement in the boards has not changed due to this.
The other question is,
to react, you need to make sure that the company has the right processes in place, and these are the tasks of the board.
And enough cash flow, enough cash in the bank, access to money. And you mentioned deglobalization. What are the business opportunities that are coming out of this trend, in your opinion?
So I said that I fear the trend to deglobalization.
Okay.
It's not that I recommend deglobalization. Nevertheless, in some aspects, I see a chance for Europe in regard to this perceived lack of autonomy of Europe in this crisis. And if we had the chance that European governments and European big companies join forces in, let's say, produce, it's just a crazy example, it's not that I recommend exactly this, but their own Google or their own Microsoft or their own, in Cisco, all these things, or Huawei, this would help Europe to be better prepared for global crises. And I don't think that you need all of that in Europe. But that would be a good challenge for the politicians to think what is really the competency I really want to have as a European competency and European what is important for my autonomy. Pharmacy, for example, is also one point. A lot of pharmaceutical production was brought to places where it was cheaper and less regulated to make pharmaceutical transactions. And that is exactly also the point. I think the governments need to be aware that with too much regulation and too high prices, they can have the wish to have it in Europe, but if energy is double the price as in other regions outside of Europe, then high energy consuming companies, they won't get to Europe.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think there are lessons to be learned. And we're almost at the end. So we enter the point of actually after having spoken so much about deep topics, now we enter the point of being really high about and humorous. I asked you also for a joke if you were to. You're like, no. Well, if you had a joke in mind, please go ahead and tell us, because I would love to hear how a board member in these heavy industry companies tells a joke. Because I know you're a very funny person, you can't hide it.
Joke teller, and I don't have a memory for jokes. I'm really well placed for this. But I like the Corona joke, which is a blondine joke. So lucky for us, we are not blonde. So you see, I have already messed it up because that was about. The question is, what is a species which dies first in the Corona lockdown? So the answer is the blondes, because the hairdressers have all closed.
Oh, well, since this is coming from a lady, I accept a blonde joke. And I'm not going to do the censorship.
The intelligence of the blondes, it's only about the fact that they are not natural blondes.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I used to have blonde hair. Can you imagine? I used to have that when I was like 20. Yeah, I don't look for pictures from that time. I have a joke too.
Okay.
My joke goes, what do you call two monkeys who share an Amazon account?
What do you call two monkeys? Tell me.
Primates. Pamela, thank you so much. My jam is not done yet, and your salad is also almost. Yeah, we totally didn't manage it tonight, but it's totally okay because we have a couple of minutes, and I'm hoping that you're going to stick around for a wine moment with us. And I want to tell you again, and say everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining Entrepreneur's Kitchen tonight. Thank you, Pamela, for being my guest tonight. This was an awesome episode. Very, very interesting. Think about the cash, guys. And looking forward to seeing you tomorrow at the Entrepreneur's Kitchen. It's going to be another exciting episode with another female entrepreneur, Tanya Talbot from Bonn. She is the leader of the International Voices Choir. So she's a musician dealing with a lot of different cultures. I'm looking forward to hosting her here as well tomorrow. Have a good night. Bye-bye, and stay tuned.